In this video, you'll see why a hummingbird has to feed 8 times per hour, a moose zombie, and perhaps the most evil bird on the planet. But first, let's start with this. Number 10. The deer. For male deer, the antlers are a big deal, especially when it comes to mating. On top of being important weapons in squaring up to other males, huge healthy antlers signal to female deer that this particular male is strong and far more fertile. On the flip side, the same antlers can be a source of trouble during duels. They sometimes cause wounds which are to be expected in a fight, but this is far less dangerous compared to when the antlers get intertwined. It's a pretty common occurrence and could mean death for one or both of the battling deer. Cause of death here could be anything from a hunter, a predator, drowning, or starvation. The deer don't always end up dead though, at least not both of them. Sometimes the antlers can break off, which can be quite a relief for the animals, especially if they've been stuck for days. That or a kind-hearted human might bump into the pair and end the standoff by cutting the antlers. Good thing is they can still grow back. In fact, even without the cutting or breaking off during fights, the antlers routinely shed off every year and regrow, getting bigger as the animal racks up years. Number 9. The redback spider. Also referred to as the Australian black widow, the redback spider is easily recognizable by the red stripe on the upper side of its abdomen, and it's one of the few species of spiders that you should actually be afraid of. While the spider's bite rarely leads to death, the ensuing symptoms of envenomation can be hard to bear. Alongside the excruciating pain, the bite also causes vomiting, sweating, nausea, headaches, and general agitation. But it's not just humans that have to worry about potential attacks. Guess what? Redback spiders, especially males and young ones, also have to tread carefully around their own kind. You see, the redback spider society is structured in such a way that the females of the dominant sex are responsible for spinning webs in which they invite their male counterparts when they're ready for mating. And once these females have what they want, aka the sperm, they've been known to turn around and just devour their mates. Interestingly, and disgustingly enough, this occurs right during the copulation process, sometimes assisted by the male himself. And even if the male doesn't get devoured during the process, he'll die later from the bite injuries. The young redback spiders, on the other hand, will usually feed on their less active siblings. There's a lot of cannibalism here. Number 8. Moose. White-tailed deer play host to a parasitic roundworm that basically has no effect on them. But when it lands on a moose, things can get a bit out of hand. After it's been swallowed by the moose, the worm larvae penetrates the stomach walls, travels to the spinal cord, and finally the moose's brain. This happens in just a few days and the effects start showing immediately. Once the worm reaches the brain, they destroy the nervous tissue, which leads to the moose developing neurological problems and zombie-like behavior of just wandering around, unable to feed or do anything. The moose basically loses control over its own body. It's a good thing though, an infected moose doesn't attempt to feed on other moose as human zombies do in movies. Ultimately, the worms end up killing their moose host within just a few days. Sadly, there's nothing that can be done to save such a moose other than euthanizing it. It at least stopped its suffering. Number 7. The sloth. Here comes the slowest animal on Earth, the sloth. Spending most of its life in the trees, this Central and South American native is motionless most of the time. This is because it sleeps up to about 20 hours per day. Even when awake, the sloth will move when it's absolutely necessary, at the pace of about 13 feet per minute. At that pace, the animal is a free meal for predators such as the harpy eagle, jaguars, and ocelots. Well, that's if they can spot it. Due to the extremely slow pace, it's almost impossible to make out a sloth's movement, especially if you consider that quite a few of them develop algae on their backs that helps them blend in with the leaves. So while nature might have dealt them a bad hand, they can still survive vicious predators if they're careful enough. Aside from being slow, sloths are also quite clumsy on the ground since their hind limbs are practically useless. On the other hand though, their front limbs, while strong, have extremely long claws which aren't exactly helpful as far as movement is concerned. Against a big cat, these disadvantages mean a sloth wouldn't last long in the forest floor. Number 6. Birds. While a lot of animals tend to look forward to raising their young ones, certain species of birds don't seem to like the idea all that much. However, rather than just kinda give up, they dump their parental responsibility onto other unsuspecting bird species. The cuckoo bird is one great example of this evil, or should we say ingenious scheme. More evil, really. The plan is simple enough. The female cuckoo identifies a nest, watches it from a distance until the other bird leaves, and then she flies in to lay her egg. Sometimes she might even push out one of the other bird's eggs to maintain the same number in the nest. The other bird picks up from there, incubating the egg until it hatches alongside hers. The evil scheme is continued by the young cuckoo, who, as soon as he's able to move, does all he can to throw out the other bird's eggs or younglings to reduce competition. And even if he isn't able to do this, cuckoos generally grow faster and bigger, which means they can reach the host mom's mouth easily during feeding time. The actual younglings that the mom should be feeding might end up starving or getting just enough to barely survive. Number 5. Ants. For some army ants, pheromones are everything as far as movement goes. They're blind, so following up with this chemical trail is the only way they can stay together over long distances. Problem is, this system doesn't always work. A slight disturbance in the pheromone trail means the army ants lose communication with the other ants in front. The only option the army ants have in this case is to follow the individuals immediately in front of them, creating an endless loop of the insects thinking they're on their way. Dubbed the death spiral, the endless loop can go on for hours until the ants eventually walk themselves to death either from exhaustion or hunger. The fatal behavior was first described by William Beebe, an American naturalist, in 1921. At over 1,200 feet in diameter, the death spiral observed by Beebe remains the largest ever seen to this very day. Each ant in the record-setting spiral is said to have spent at least 2.5 hours to complete a single revolution. Other animals too have been observed to exhibit this behavior, namely some caterpillars and certain fish species. Number 4. The hummingbird. Aside from its tiny size, the hummingbird is known for its tendency to flap its wings so fast that they produce a certain humming sound. Just how fast the flapping is will usually depend on the specific species. Generally, the smaller the bird, the more number of flaps per second and the clearer the humming becomes. The largest hummingbird is said to average about 12 flaps per second, while the smallest can go an average of up to 80 flaps. As fascinating as this might sound, the flaps are actually a way for the hummingbirds to deal with the brutal life that nature handed them. By flapping so much, they can travel and eat more, just like their metabolism demands. Being among animals with the highest metabolic rate, hummingbirds have to constantly eat, sometimes up to 8 times per hour just to keep up actually. In a single day, one of these birds can visit between 1,000 and 2,000 flowers, which basically means resting is a non-existent concept in a hummingbird's life, at least during the day. At night, on the other hand, they have a mechanism that significantly slows down the metabolic rate, enabling them to stay alive without having to constantly forage like they do during the day. Number 3. The black lace weaver. The black lace weaver spider is among the few animal species that exhibit matriphagy, which is when offspring get to devour their mother after some time. And really, it's not for the lack of trying on the mom's part. If anything, she works pretty hard to keep her younglings full, just like any other new mother. When spiderlings emerge, the mom immediately starts laying a special kind of egg called trophic eggs that the young ones use to feed on. So keen is the mom on keeping her babies healthy that all the younglings eat the same number of trophic eggs. Research has shown that the eggs are extremely important in the development of black lace weavers. As has been observed, spiders that miss the eggs usually end up underweight, are more likely to resort to cannibalism, molt later on, and have lower survival rates. Exactly a day after the young spiders molt and the last trophic eggs are gone, the mother rouses the killer instincts in her babies by drumming on the web and placing herself directly on them. At first, they just climb on her slowly but get aggressive as she continues the drumming, eventually devouring her. Number 2. The Komodo dragon. As far as predators are concerned, most Komodo dragons don't have much to worry about as long as they're fully grown. Their size helps a lot with this. At length reaching up to 10 feet and weighing at 300 pounds, these monster lizards are capable of taking on any animal in their ecosystem. Of course, the hunting is a bit more than just the size. The reptiles are known for secreting toxins from their mouths that induce shock, lower blood pressure, and cause massive bleeding of prey. To ensure these toxins get into the prey's system, Komodo dragons chew on the victims using their sharp, serrated teeth. With everything else going for them as far as feeding is concerned, it might seem like the largest lizards have nothing to worry about. But that's only if the said Komodo dragon is big enough. Smaller dragons are always at the risk of being treated as prey by their own larger siblings. This is especially true among the males as they routinely fight to establish a hierarchy. Losers in such duels have the option of taking off or staying around and being devoured. Number 1. Rats. Many rats holed up in a small space is probably not the best of ideas. While it's quite rare, such rats risk ending up in what's referred to as a rat king, which is basically a ton of rats with entangled tails. They can't move or do anything, and the more they try to get away, the tighter the knot holding their tails become. The next thing here is usually death, caused by exhaustion from panicking or hunger. While the phenomenon has been known for quite some time now, it hasn't been looked into that much, and the majority of reported cases are from the distant past, mainly in Germany, where several preserved rat kings are kept in museums. It's not clear how the entangling occurs, but scientists have speculated it could be caused by either hair or some other sticky substance, compounded as the rats struggle to free themselves. It's also been observed mainly in two rat species, namely Norway rats and black rats. Outside of the rat kingdom, it's also been observed in squirrels and cats, just a little rarer. See you all next time!